The day her father's estate was divided, Camille Brooks became the family joke. Her two brothers got the rental properties, 4 units each, steady income, tenants already paying. Her sister got the commercial building on Dexter Avenue, the one with the bakery on the ground floor and 2 offices above it. Everyone walked out of that room holding something real. Camille got a lot. Not a house, not a building. A vacant lot on the edge of Meridian Street, overgrown with weeds, fenced off with rusted chain link, sitting between a shuttered laundromat and a nail salon that changed names every year. The deed was 2 pages. The land was barely a quarter acre. The tax records showed it had been assessed at $14,008 years ago, and nobody had bothered to reassess it since. Her sister laughed first, quiet behind her hand, but Camille heard it. Her oldest brother Marcus leaned back in his chair and said, "Dad always did have a soft spot for lost causes." He looked at Camille when he said it. The estate lawyer cleared his throat and moved on. Camille folded the deed carefully, creased it once, and slipped it into her coat pocket without a word. She signed where she was told to sign. She shook the lawyer's hand. She walked out into the pale November afternoon and sat in her car for a long time, watching leaves drag across the parking lot. She didn't cry. She had learned a long time ago that crying in front of certain people only gave them something to talk about later. She drove home with the heat on low, the deed sitting on the passenger seat, her father's handwriting visible on the sticky note attached to the front. He had written only 4 words. "Trust the ground, Camille." She set it on her kitchen table, made herself a cup of tea, and stared at it until the tea went cold. Before we go any further, we'd love for you to hit that subscribe button. Your support means the world to us, and it helps us bring you more stories like this one. Now, let's continue. Her father, Earl Brooks, had not been a wealthy man by any measure that mattered to her siblings. He drove the same truck for 19 years. He bought his clothes at the same 2 stores. He grew tomatoes in the backyard and gave most of them away to neighbors. But he had been deliberate. Every dollar he saved had a destination. Every piece of property he owned had a reason. Camille had always known this about him. She was the one who sat with him on Sunday evenings while he spread maps across the dining room table. She was the one who drove him to city council meetings when his knees got bad. She was the one who listened while he talked about Meridian Street like it was a living thing, something breathing underneath all that concrete and neglect. Her siblings had never been interested in those conversations. After the will reading, Marcus called her twice in 1 week. His tone was generous in the way that people are generous when they think they've already won. He offered to buy the lot from her. $50,000, he said. Clean transaction, no hassle. She could walk away from a piece of dirt and have real money in her account by Friday. She told him she'd think about it. He called again 3 days later. The offer had grown to $65,000. He mentioned, almost casually, that he had connections at the city planning office and that the area wasn't going to develop the way people hoped. He said he was doing her a favor. She thanked him and told him she'd be in touch. She didn't call back. Instead, she drove to Meridian Street on a Tuesday morning and stood at the fence for a long time. The lot was worse than she remembered. Broken glass in the far corner. A section of fence pushed inward like something heavy had leaned against it. The soil was dark and compacted, and the weeds had taken over completely. But her father had walked this ground. She could feel that somehow, standing there in the cold. She started making calls. The first person she reached was a woman named Dr. Patricia Osei, a soil consultant her father had mentioned once at dinner, years ago. She found the name in a small address book tucked inside the deed envelope, another thing her father had left deliberately. Dr. Osei came out on a Thursday afternoon with 2 assistants and a set of equipment Camille didn't recognize. They worked quietly, taking samples from 6 different points across the lot, measuring, testing, logging numbers on tablets. Camille stood near the fence and watched. When Dr. Osei finally walked over, she pulled off her gloves slowly. "Your father contacted me 18 months ago," she said. "Asked me to run a preliminary analysis. I sent him the results last spring." Camille went still. "What did the results say?" Dr. Osei looked at her steadily. "That this ground sits directly above one of the largest untapped mineral deposits in this county, lithium-bearing clay formations, deep but accessible." She paused. "Do you know what lithium is worth right now?" Camille knew. Everyone who had been paying attention knew. Electric vehicles, battery technology. The entire country was racing toward it, and the supply chain was scrambling to keep up. Companies were paying fortunes for domestic deposits. The federal government had fast-tracked permits in 3 states already. She looked back at the lot, the weeds, the broken fence, the shuttered laundromat next door. "How much?" she asked quietly. Dr. Osei named a number. Camille turned away from her for a moment, facing the empty lot, giving herself 3 seconds to absorb what she had just heard. Then she turned back. "Who else knows?" "Your father asked me to keep it confidential. I honored that." Dr. Osei looked at her carefully. "He told me his daughter would come. He said she'd be the quiet one." Camille did not tell her siblings. She hired an attorney, a woman named Renata Cole who specialized in mineral rights and land development. Renata spent 2 weeks reviewing the soil reports, cross-referencing county records, and running title searches. What she found made her sit down and read it twice. The lot had been quietly rezoned 18 months ago. The rezoning had received almost no public attention, buried in a 200-page city planning document that nobody outside of City Hall had bothered to read. Earl Brooks had attended every meeting. He had spoken during public comment. He had been the only private citizen in the room 3 times running. He had known exactly what was coming. Renata also found something else. A letter, filed with the county recorder's office, written in Earl's hand and notarized 2 years before his death. It outlined his intention to transfer the mineral rights along with the deed, a detail that made the lot not just a piece of land but a claim on everything beneath it. "Your father was not a wealthy man," Renata said, leaning back in her chair, "but he was a very patient one." Camille thought about 19 years in the same truck, tomatoes in the backyard, Sunday evenings with maps spread across the table. "He was the smartest person I knew," she said. "Nobody gave him credit for it." Renata nodded. "They will now." The offer came from a company called Verdant Resources, a mining and materials firm with federal contracts and a reputation for moving fast when they found what they were looking for. They had been surveying Meridian Street for months, working their way through property records, knocking on doors. When they reached Camille's lot, they reached Renata first. The negotiation took 6 weeks. Camille attended every meeting. She said very little, asked precise questions, and let Renata do the talking. She wore the same gray coat she had worn to the estate reading. She kept her phone face down on the table. The final number landed at $11.4 million for a 40-year mineral rights lease, with Camille retaining full ownership of the land itself and a percentage royalty on every ton extracted. She signed on a Wednesday afternoon in a conference room downtown. The pen felt heavier than it should have. Outside, the sky was clear and cold. She sat in her car for a moment, the same way she had sat after the estate reading, in the same parking garage, 2 blocks from the same lawyer's office. This time she did cry. Briefly. For her father mostly. For 19 years in that truck. For every Sunday evening and every city council meeting and every conversation her siblings had walked away from. Then she dried her face, started the car, and drove to Meridian Street one more time. News moved the way it always does in families, sideways, through the wrong people, at the worst possible moment. Marcus found out from a colleague at the planning office who had seen Camille's name on the Verdant Resources filing. He called her immediately, voice stretched tight over forced calm. "I heard you had some activity on the lot," he said. "Some," she said. "Anything you want to talk about?" "Not particularly." He called again the next morning. The tone had shifted, less calm, more direct. He reminded her that he had offered to help her. He said the family should discuss major financial decisions together. He said their father would have wanted them to work as a unit. She let him finish. Then she said, "Dad left each of us what he wanted us to have. You got what you wanted. I got what he chose for me." Silence on the line. "The lot is mine, Marcus. It's always been mine." She ended the call. Her sister called an hour later, then the other brother. Each conversation followed the same shape, concern disguised as family loyalty, greed dressed up as togetherness. Camille listened to all of it. She didn't raise her voice once. When the story finally became public, attached to a local business journal piece about Verdant Resources and the Meridian Street development, her family's name was in the third paragraph. Camille Brooks, daughter of the late Earl Brooks, longtime Meridian Street property owner. The comment section filled up fast. Someone who had been at the estate reading posted that they had watched her walk out with a folded deed and nothing else. Someone else replied that clearly the father knew something the rest of them didn't. Marcus did not comment publicly, but Camille heard through a cousin that he had gone back to the estate lawyer, asking whether the will could be contested on grounds that Earl had not been of sound mind. The lawyer had reviewed the file and declined to pursue it. Earl Brooks, he said, had been one of the most deliberately organized clients he had ever worked with. 6 months after the signing, Camille bought a house 3 miles from Meridian Street. Nothing extravagant. 4 bedrooms, a backyard, a kitchen with enough counter space to spread maps across the table. She planted tomatoes in the spring. On the first Sunday after she moved in, she sat at her kitchen table with a cup of tea and her father's old address book open in front of her. She had been working her way through it slowly, calling the names she recognized, introducing herself to the ones she didn't. Most of them had known Earl for decades. Most of them said the same thing in different ways. "Your father talked about you, said you were the one who listened." She also sent a letter to each of her siblings. Not angry, not triumphant, just clear. She told them she held no bitterness. She told them she hoped their properties served them well. She told them that if they ever wanted to sit at a table and talk the way their father used to talk, carefully, patiently, about things that mattered, she would make the time. Only one of them wrote back. Her youngest brother, Derek, the quietest of the 3, the one who had said nothing at the estate reading. He wrote 2 sentences. "I should have listened more when Dad was talking. I'm sorry I laughed." She kept the letter in the same place she kept the deed, folded once, in the inside pocket of her gray coat. On Meridian Street, the construction had already begun. The chain-link fence was gone. The weeds were cleared. The ground her father had walked was finally being opened up, patient and full, giving back everything it had been quietly holding. Just like he knew it would. If you believe some people are given less so they can be trusted with more, share this story. Because sometimes the ones who inherit silence inherit everything.